Chapter 729. The leader had a smug look on his face. In fact, he was also one of Director Yang Shuchuan's most valued subordinates, Dong Hui. Usually, he was in charge of the entry and exit of the docks. When he said this, he intentionally glanced at Leng Feng, who was on duty. He was basically telling Che Chao and the others that if they didn't want to be captured by Leng Feng, they had to be more obedient. Usually, he would scare others, but this time, he was intimidated by Dong Hui's words. Che Chao smiled but didn't reply. He only turned his head to look at Director Yang San, obviously asking for instructions. Don't make a big deal out of it. Take them down first. Yang San's position meant that he was incomparably decisive when it came to doing things. He really wasn't in the mood to explain anything to a few small fries. As soon as Yang San spoke, the people around him immediately moved. They moved like lightning and restrained 3 of them. Only Dong Hui's skills were not bad. He actually dodged them. After jumping 3 meters away, he suddenly shouted at Leng Feng, who was on duty, "Come quickly, there's a spy here." As soon as he shouted, the Leng Feng over there moved. As elites, they had long been paying attention to what was happening here. The appearance of Yang San's group was already very eye-catching. It was difficult for dozens of men not to attract attention wherever they went. However, they had the Security Bureau's credentials. They belonged to 2 different departments, so they had no choice but to let them go. When they saw Dong Hui, who was also from the Security Bureau, stop them, they thought that it was indeed an internal matter of the Security Bureau, so they didn't care. However, Dong Hui's sudden shout made them feel that something was wrong, so they swarmed over. The entire squad of Leng Feng only had a few seconds to pull out their guns, then surrounded Yang San and the others. "Put your hands on your heads and squat down. Tell us your true identities or we'll shoot." The black muzzles were fixed on Yang San and the others. Che Chao first stood in front of Yang San, using his body as a human shield, then said, "We're all on the same side, don't misunderstand." "Who's on the same side as you? You keep saying that you're from the Security Bureau, but why didn't we receive any orders? You want to play the role of a spy from the Security Bureau? Your performance is still lacking." Dong Hui jumped out, accusing Che Chao and the others of having a problem with their identities. Che Chao's identity was known to many of the Leng Feng patrolling the area, who often appeared at the docks. Now that he said this, of course, everyone believed him and not Yang San and the others. Che Chao's group, Dong Hui's accusation, everyone had their own opinions. If this continued, the situation would only get worse. Seeing that the situation was about to get out of control, Yang San finally stood up and said, "All of you, shut up." As Yang San spoke, he took out an officer's certificate and handed it to a Class 1 sergeant, Leng Feng. "This is my certificate. It's enough to prove my identity. If you still don't believe me, send someone to the palace with this and find Yang Wu. He will verify everything." Leng of Leng Feng's is Leng, the Leng's is SSS it's. Seeing that it was a green military ID, squad leader Leng Feng took it without any hesitation. He opened it and saw the words, "Yang San, Director of the Security Bureau, Senior Colonel," written on it. The rank of colonel was also the highest in the mercenary army at that time. Other than Yang Chendong, the 1st Division Commander of the Army, Leng Song, and the 1st Division Commander of the Navy, Gao Xiong, were only at the same rank. However, a senior colonel had appeared in front of him. Leng Feng's expression changed as he looked at Yang San. Speaking of which, if Yang San's military certificate showed that he was a major, or even a lieutenant colonel, it wouldn't have aroused Leng Feng's suspicions. However, the senior colonel was too eye-catching. It gave people a surreal feeling. If that's the case, I'll need to send someone to the palace with this document. I hope you can understand. Class Monitor Leng Feng didn't dare to make a decision at the moment, so he decided to do as the other party said. After all, he knew Yang Wu. Yang Wu would come to the docks to check on things when he had nothing to do. "Sure, but I have a request. No one here is allowed to leave. Also, what happened here must not be spread out before Yang Wu arrives." Yang San nodded. He could understand the other party's actions. They were also doing things according to the rules, but he wouldn't allow others to ruin his big plan. All right. Class Monitor Leng Feng was also very straightforward. After making a promise to Yang San, he sent the vice squad leader out and told him to ride a bicycle to the palace to see Yang Wuyi. Leng Feng didn't speak to him. Instead, after looking at the document, his attitude changed greatly. In Dong Hui's eyes, all of this gave him a bad feeling. The other party claimed to be from the Security Bureau, but he had never seen them before. Moreover, judging from Leng Feng's attitude towards them, they seemed to be of a very high rank. Could it be that the other party was his superior? When he thought about how the Security Bureau mostly communicated through a single line, such a possibility existed, his expression became somewhat ugly. The mission that Director Chen Shuquan had given him was to watch here and not allow strangers to come ashore. If there were any, he had to report it. For the sake of his duty, he prepared to leave quietly. But just as he took a step forward, Yang San's voice rang out. You are very smart and know how to see the situation. It's just that you followed the wrong person. If you can turn over a new leaf, you can be considered a promising talent. He didn't think that his actions would be seen by others. At this moment, Dong Hui knew that he couldn't leave, so he could only turn his head and chuckle. Then he stood there and waited. He was following orders, and what he did was in accordance with the rules. There was really no need to be afraid of others. Both parties waited here. In less than an hour, the sound of bicycle bells rang out in the distance. Following that, Yang Wu led a group of Leng Feng and appeared here. Even though it was night and the lights at the pier weren't very bright, Yang San still recognized at a glance that this time, it wasn't only Yang Wu who came. The division commander of the army's 1st Division, Leng Song, also appeared with him. Yang Wu was naturally dressed casually, while Leng Song was indeed wearing a senior colonel's military uniform. The 2 bars and 4 fours were extremely dazzling under the light. Seeing that the division commander had arrived, the platoon commander at the pier immediately stood at attention and saluted. Leng Song stopped the bicycle and casually bowed to the soldiers of the Leng Feng. He strode over to Yang San with a smile on his face and said, Chief Yang, why didn't you say anything before coming? This is a surprise attack, isn't it? Seeing that not only did the division commander know Yang San, but his attitude was also so warm, the platoon commander at the side naturally retreated to the side. At this moment, Dong Hui's expression also turned ugly. It was obvious that he had made a mistake this time. It seemed that not only was the other party one of his men, but his position was also quite high. Yang San returned the military salute to Leng Song, but there was no smile on his face. After the salute, he said to Che Chao, Restrain these 4 people, I want to interrogate them later. After making some simple arrangements, Yang San looked at Leng Song and glanced at Yang Wu. He only said one sentence, Young master is very angry this time. With just one sentence, Yang Wu, who was incomparably famous in Crimson Nest City, who was called Yang Wei, immediately lowered his head. Just one sentence was enough to show that the young master was dissatisfied with him. As one of the first 5 servants of the Yang family, they were different from the others. Others might have to rely on military merits to be promoted, but their status rose along with Yang Xie's continuous growth. If one had to describe it, they were the same as the eunuchs by the emperor's side. They only needed to serve Yang Chendong well. It could be said that a single sentence determined their future and life. Now that the master was angry, it meant that Yang Wu didn't do his job well. Yang Wu felt very ashamed. Seeing Yang Wu lower his head, Yang San didn't say anything else. Instead, he looked at Leng Song and said, Young master is also very dissatisfied with your work. Crimson City is Yang Xie's foundation, yet such a big thing happened. You didn't notice it, didn't report it, and didn't solve it. This time, you lost points. Yes, I will reflect. Leng Song also lowered his head, looking like he had done something wrong and was very regretful. Logically speaking, with his position in the military, Leng Song was the 1st Regiment commander of the army, the 1st Division commander of the army. Other than Yang Chendong, very few people could suppress him, not even Yang San. However, the problem was that Yang San came as an imperial envoy to solve the problem. His position was completely different. He came as a representative of the 6th Young Master. What he said was also instructed by the 6th Young Master. Other than admitting his mistake, he could only cooperate. There is no use in reflecting. The young master wants to see results. I hope that you can redeem yourselves and cooperate with my work. If you can't even do this well, I can only report the truth to the young master. When the time comes, if your positions change, don't blame me. Yang San didn't want to have any deep contact with Lung Song. Although the other party was also in a high position, he was very clear about his own identity. He was a servant of the Yang family, one of the young master's people. He only served the young master and didn't need to care about other people's feelings. Moreover, as the head of the security bureau, if he had too much contact with important members of the military, in the eyes of others, it was inevitable that they would have other thoughts. If that was the case, he couldn't imagine what the result would be. Yang San's official words fell into Lung Song's ears. He didn't even dare to have any thoughts of objecting. Yes, Lung Feng of the army will definitely cooperate. We will definitely cooperate. Very good. That was to lock up Lung Feng in this class first. It's not that they did anything wrong, but this is an important matter. We can't be careless in the slightest. My arrival is still a secret and definitely can't be spread. Understand? Yang San was satisfied with Lung Song's attitude. He took this opportunity to give his first order after coming ashore. Chapter 730. Understood. Lung Song nodded, then called over an adjutant beside him. He whispered a few words, and someone immediately went to implement this matter. Just as Lung Song finished making the arrangements, Yang San spoke again. From today onwards, the dock will look the same as usual on the surface, but in fact, any personnel and goods entering or leaving the dock will need my permission to go out to sea. In order not to alert the enemy, you can make a move at sea. In short, the dock must be safe and sound. This matter will require Division Commander Lung's attention. As for the matters at sea, I will visit Division Commander Gao Xiong and explain it to him. Good. There are no problems on my side. I will personally arrange for people to guard here. Absolutely nothing will happen. Lung Song patted his chest and promised. Thank you for your hard work. Everyone, do what you are supposed to do. Later, write down everything you know about Yang Taizhu and Chen Shuquan on a piece of paper and have someone send it to me. I want to know more about them. Yang San's businesslike face gave off a huge psychological pressure. After saying this, Yang San turned and walked over to Dong Hui and the other three. After arranging the external affairs, it was time to deal with the internal affairs of the Security Bureau. At this time, Dong Hui was no longer as lively as before. Instead, he had a face full of respect and worship. From Che Chao's mouth, he finally knew who he was facing just now. It was actually the boss of the Security Bureau. This made him excited, but also a little afraid. He was excited because he had worshipped the bureau chief for a long time. Now that he could finally see his idol at such a close distance, his heartbeat had already sped up countless times. He was afraid because he had stopped the other party and even almost made a move on him. He didn't know what kind of punishment he would receive for doing something wrong. With these feelings of apprehension, Dong Hui knelt on the ground with a plop the moment Yang San strode into the duty room at the side of the dock. At this moment he only had one thought, and that was to do his best to make up for what he had done wrong. Yang San boldly sat down on a chair in the duty room. He looked at Dong Hui, who was kneeling on the floor and didn't even dare to raise his head, and said, I heard that you are Qin Shuquan's trusted aide. Have you ever participated in his matters? He thought that the director would reprimand him for his actions just now, but he didn't expect that the director was talking about something else. After a moment of hesitation, Dong Hui immediately shook his head and said, I'm from the Security Bureau. Usually, I only come into contact with Director Chen for work matters, such as guarding the docks and keeping an eye on all suspicious people. As for Director Chen's private affairs, I have no right to participate, nor will I participate. With just a few words, Dong Hui had already made his position clear. That was, he was only Qin Shuquan's subordinate. The reason why he was chosen as Qin Shuquan's confidant was because of his ability. As for personal friendship, there was really nothing to it. This was also one of the rules of the Security Bureau. There was only work between superiors and subordinates, and there was no personal relationship between them. This way, it was possible to avoid any feelings between the two parties and make them emotional during work. When Yang San heard Dong Hui's words, he nodded in satisfaction. He was not worried that this person would dare to lie to him. The internal rules of the Security Bureau were very strict. If he deceived his superior, it would be difficult for him to die even if he wanted to. Moreover, there were some things that he only needed to send someone to investigate and he could come to a conclusion. Dong Hui should know this. In this way, Dong Hui should not be involved in Chen Shuchuan's affairs much. From this point of view, this person could still be used. If he performed well, it was not impossible to put him in an important position in the future. He thought that Che Chao was going to replace Chen Shuchuan's position, but he was a newcomer and couldn't sort out many relationships for a while. If he had the help of a local snake like Dong Hui, then the progress of the work would definitely speed up. Yang San had an idea in his mind. When he looked at Dong Hui, who was kneeling on the ground, he was no longer as cold and ruthless as before when he spoke. Dong Hui, I believe what you just said for the time being, but you should also know that if you lie to me, what will the consequences be? Yes, your subordinate knows, so your subordinate will never dare to lie to the director. Dong Hui hurriedly kowtowed to the ground. At this moment, he just wanted to dig out his heart to show the director that he really didn't participate in some of Chen Shuchuan's specific affairs. In fact, it was not that Dong Hui didn't want to, but that Chen Shuquan was being careful. Since it was a secret, of course, the fewer people who knew, the better. Besides, once the matter was known by his subordinates, if one of them contacted the headquarters and reported the matter to the director, wouldn't he be shooting himself in the foot? Yang San also thought about this problem, so he initially ruled out the possibility that Dong Hui was involved in the smuggling incident. Even if the other party didn't have this motive and condition, Yang San could say something openly. Very well, I hope you haven't participated. If so, your opportunity to make a contribution will come. To tell you the truth, this time, the director came in person to solve some of Chen Shuchuan's personal problems. If there is no accident, he can no longer be competent for the position of the director of the Crimson City Security Bureau. There are still a lot of things to do next, and even the entire Crimson City Security Bureau will undergo a big reshuffle. If you perform well, you can still stay and be entrusted with important tasks. As for where to go, you can make your own choice. What choice was there? One was heaven, the other was hell. Dong Hui didn't even want to think about it more. He immediately said, Director, please rest assured, I will perform well and actively cooperate. Raise your head. Since he was going to continue to use Dong Hui, and in order not to alert the enemy and arouse Chen Shuchuan's suspicion, Yang San decided to add more weight to Dong Hui and give him a good reminder. Hearing this, Dong Hui raised his head and saw Yang San glaring at him. Remember, if you dare to have any selfish motives or ruin things, I promise you that you will suffer a fate worse than death. Your family and relatives will suffer the same fate, understand? Understood, understood. Dong Hui was really frightened by this gaze, but after raising his head, he immediately lowered it again, trembling all over. After convincing Dong Hui, or putting enough pressure on him, Yang San walked out of the dock's duty room. He looked at Che Chao, who was guarding the door, and said, There shouldn't be any problems with this person, but you still need to send someone to check on him. If you're sure there's no problem, use him well. He should be one of your capable assistants in the future. Yes, Director, subordinate understands. Che Chao's expression didn't change, and then began to call people to investigate Dong Hui's situation. At the same time, he also wanted to interrogate the other 3 Security Bureau agents to get first-hand information. Yang San came to Crimson City. Although he was still discovered, he managed to salvage the situation in time. Furthermore, when he found Yang Wu, Lung Song happened to be there as well. With the help of the number 1 person in the army, the matter of him arriving at the dock was suppressed. No one reported, and even the people guarding the dock were pressured by Yang San's power and chose to follow. As the director of Crimson City's Security Bureau, Chen Shuquan didn't know anything. He still did what he was supposed to do, preparing for another smuggling operation in 3 days. Yang Tizhu went to the palace more frequently these 2 days. Of course, with his status, he could not enter the inner palace. He could only meet his wife, Lin, who he spent a lot of effort to catch up with, in the outer palace. He took the opportunity to get information from her, wanting to see if the palace was any different than usual. Since it was Yang Chendong's personal order, all the actions were naturally concealed. Not to mention that Lin was only a servant girl that the fifth madam fancied. Even the fifth madam herself didn't know that Yang San came to Crimson City to investigate. After hugging Lin tenderly for a while, Yang Taizhu left the palace with a satisfied face. He didn't find anything wrong, so he decided to do everything according to plan. He thought that after this matter was done, he would have a large sum of money. In the long run, his Yang family would be rich enough to rival a country. At that time, even if there was a possibility of the matter being exposed, he would just leave Crimson City. After he had enough money, even if he formed a team, building a country wouldn't be a problem. Yang Taizhu was sometimes a little arrogant. Since Yang Chendong could do it from scratch, why couldn't he do it with so much money? Nobles, generals, and ministers, it was better to have guts. Doing too much injustice leads to one's own destruction. This sentence was said by the ancients, and the truth also proved the authenticity and reliability of this sentence. 3 days later, when the time came to 9:30 p.m., when the docks began to return to silence, Director Chen Shuquan appeared on time. Just like the previous times when he smuggled goods, he still used the name of the Security Bureau, saying that he wanted to secretly transport a batch of goods out to sea. With this name, when he brought 60 to 70 carriages of goods all the way to the new docks, no one dared to check. The green light all the way let the goods be sent to the long-prepared cargo ship. While the goods were being loaded, Director Chen Shuquan took out a box of Aries brand cigarettes from his pocket. He took out a stick and put it in his mouth, then took out another stick and handed it to the head of the Security Bureau, Dong Hui. It had to be said that cigarettes could not only reduce stress and loneliness, but also play a strong role in communication. The cigarette was lit, and the relationship between Chen Shuquan and Dong Hui seemed to be a lot closer at this moment. Dong Hui, did anything happen at the docks during this time? When he said this, Chen Shuquan's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he could see through Dong Hui's heart. Chapter 731. Nothing happened. Everything is normal, Yizichen said. Dong Hui said with a smile, but his heart was beating like a drum. After all, Chen Shuquan was his superior, and he really had no confidence in lying in front of his superior. Fortunately, he was very smart and did not dwell on this matter. Instead, he took the initiative to change the topic and asked, "Director, are these things to be given to the Security Bureau personnel outside the island? There are a lot of these things." Chen Shuquan, who was still smiling, immediately changed his expression and said seriously, "Have you forgotten the confidentiality rules? Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Don't say what you shouldn't say. How can you know these things with your status? Alright, you must be tired these days. Go home and have a good rest. There's no need for you here." The sudden coldness caused Dong Hui to pretend to be scared. He nodded his head repeatedly and then left. Looking at his back, Chen Shuquan's heart was already filled with killing intent. His subordinate was curious about this batch of goods. This was not a good sign, and it was best to kill the other party once and for all. Dong Hui did not know that Chen Shuquan had the intention to kill him. In fact, even if he knew, he would not be afraid. Right now, his backer was the bureau chief. As for now, since he was kicked out, of course, he had to inform the higher-ups of the news as soon as possible. This was a good opportunity to perform meritorious deeds. In order not to attract Chen Shuquan's attention, Che Chao did not place one of his own people at the dock. He only did 2 things. The first was to control the sea area outside the new dock in Crimson City, and the second was to wait for Dong Hui's news. 1 in and 1 out, both points were controlled. Che Chao firmly believed that unless Yang Taizhu and Chen Shuquan did not do anything, they would not be able to escape the big net he set up. But what he did not expect was that the other party would take the bait so quickly. When Dong Hui found Che Chao with sweat all over his forehead and said that their director Chen Shuquan sent dozens of carts of goods to the dock in the name of the Security Bureau, Che Chao also stood up from his chair excitedly. He often followed Bureau Chief Yang San, so he naturally knew that the security bureau did not inform him about the goods. In other words, tonight's action was completely decided by Chen Shuquan. Since that was the case, there was no doubt that the goods were smuggled. Very good, Dong Hui. You've made a great contribution this time. How about this? I'll give you 50 elite brothers. You take them to capture the backbone of the city's security bureau. As long as they don't resist, don't kill them. If they resist, you can be heavy-handed. In short, do not allow any important personnel to escape or leave our sight. Do you understand? Dong Hui had already used his actions to prove his position. At this moment, Che Chao could be considered to have completely trusted him. Yes, please rest assured, Director Che. I'll get it done right away. Dong Hui was also a little excited. This was a heavy responsibility. From this moment on, not only would he be pulled out of the Chen Shuquan case, but he would also enter the list of meritorious people. It could be imagined that his future would be limitless. Che Chao quickly left with the 50 elites of the Security Bureau. Che Chao immediately got up and rushed to the place where Director Yang was resting. Not long after, a large net was spread out, and a series of plans on paper became the final practical action. Yang residence. Ever since Yang Shan was tricked by Yang Chendong, he was sent to Baiming from Nanming. After he was sent to Chichen City, he was given a large residence. He was appointed as the Minister of Foreign Affairs to formulate foreign policies. Yang Shan had contributed greatly to the peaceful liberation of the first Shang dynasty. As a result, his words carried weight in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It was said that a weak country had no diplomacy. Although Chichen City didn't establish a country, it was better than one. Powerful military and economic capabilities made it easy for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to work with foreign countries. After establishing the two provinces of Vietnam and Laos, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs set up branches there respectively, and its status became even more extraordinary. In addition, Yang Shan and Chichen City's mayor, Yu Qian, and the Special Inspector Bureau's director, Xin Yu, used to be officials in the same court. All of these made Yang Shan's position unshakable. As a result, the Yang family could be arrogant when they were outside, as though they were superior to others. As the saying goes, a man whose heart is not content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Yang Shan, who was originally the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights in Nanming, was no longer the same as before. He should be reminiscing about the past. However, there were people who wouldn't forget their past hardships after gaining power. Instead, they believed that everything they had now was because of the hardships and tiredness they had suffered. This was the reward they deserved after putting in so much effort. When a person thought that everything he had was reasonable and deserved, his mentality would naturally change as a result. Yang Shan was the most typical example. With this kind of inflated mentality, the actions of his son, Yang Tu, seemed to be a matter of course. The Yang residence was brightly lit. Although it was already past 10 at night, most of the commoners were already asleep. However, it was still as bright as day in the Yang residence. All of this was because another batch of goods had left today. It wouldn't be long before countless taels of silver would be sent to them. With money and power, people would become inflated. Yang Taizhu was the most typical example. At this moment, he wasn't sleeping. Instead, he was very energetic and was playing a game of hide-and-seek with 4 young women. It was different from other people playing this game. If any of the 4 women were caught by Yang Taizhu, they would have to strip naked. This was what rich people did. What they did was to have fun. The 4 women were commoners who had spent money to trade with Nanming. They were originally good-looking, but because their living conditions weren't good, they became sallow and emaciated over time. However, the moment they were chosen by Yang Taizhu in the refugee camp, their lives had already changed. They ate well and wore warm clothes every day. All they needed to do was to become this man's plaything. When a poor person had problems even eating their fill, there was no need to talk about ideals and dignity. For a mouthful of food, the 4 women could only comply and allow Yang Taizhu to humiliate them. They were angry, but they didn't dare to say anything. Even though Yang Chendong had already stipulated that true Han people weren't allowed to buy and sell privately, and they weren't allowed to be forced or restricted. However, when they fell into Yang Tieju's hands, how could they have the chance to redress their grievances? Not to mention, even if they wanted to sue, where would they find the right way to do so? In the face of the powerful Yang residents, an existence that could cover the sky with one hand, anyone could only accept their fate. Yang Taiju was in a good mood. He was in the mood to play tonight. He was prepared to capture all 4 women and sleep with them. Thus, even though it was already late at night, he still didn't have the intention to rest. From time to time, the women's screams and Yang Tieju's satisfied laughter could be heard in the residence. This wasn't the first time such a scene had appeared. The servants in the residence were almost used to it. In any case, as long as the young master was happy, he could do whatever he wanted as the master. How could they dare to interfere? Who could interfere? Dong 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 dong. Suddenly, a loud knocking sound broke this laughter. In the middle of the night in the Yang manor, it was very sudden and unexpected. Who is it? It's already the middle of the night. Why are you knocking on the door? The gatekeeper sleepily got up and walked to the main entrance. He opened a small door, wanting to see who was so blind to disturb the Yang residents in the middle of the night. The moment the small door was opened, countless tall figures suddenly appeared in front of him. Then, without waiting for the gatekeeper to do anything or even open his mouth to cry out in alarm, those tall figures rushed in through the small door like fish in the sea. There was also a tall figure who immediately reached out and covered the door's mouth, blocking it completely, making it unable to make any sound. The gatekeeper still wanted to struggle, but a clear voice rang in his ears. "We are the Cold Vanguard Warriors. We are going to search the Yang residence. This place is going to be over soon. You better cooperate. If you still dare to scream, even if we kill you in the next moment, it will be in vain." The people who came were indeed the Cold Vanguard Warriors. Their mission was to surround the Yang residence and eliminate all security threats. The order even stated that if anyone resisted, they could use ruthless means to subdue them or even kill them. However, he was just a gatekeeper. They were all here to earn a living. The Cold Vanguard Warriors did not really want to kill him. The gatekeeper finally became obedient. After all, when faced with a life-threatening situation, the so-called 1 month's salary was nothing. The Cold Blade Warriors walked past them and charged towards various parts of the Yang estate. Long before they came, they had already obtained the blueprint of the Yang mansion. After clearly understanding the situation inside, they could ensure that they could control all the vital points in the shortest amount of time, minimizing the possible resistance and threats that might exist in the Yang mansion to the greatest extent. As more and more Cold Vanguard warriors rushed into the Yang residence, the servants in the residence finally noticed them. Then, there was a series of shouts and screams, causing the entire residence to become chaotic. It also startled Yang Taiju, who was still playing his game. "Young master, this is bad. A lot of Cold Vanguard warriors suddenly appeared in the residence and surrounded us. Our armory has also been sealed by them. What should we do?" A burly man who looked like a servant rushed into Yang Tieju's courtyard and saw that there were already 2 young ladies dressed in pure white clothes. However, he acted as if he did not see them and spoke with a panicked expression. Chapter 732. Yang Taiju, whose eyes were still covered by a black cloth, instinctively wanted to fly into a rage when he heard that someone had broken into his backyard. This was his private property, and usually no one was allowed to enter without orders. Otherwise, there would only be one result: death. Just as he was about to flare up, he suddenly froze when he heard that Lung Feng had barged into his residence. Then, with a wave of his right hand, he tore off the black cloth that was covering his eyes and asked with a ferocious look on his face, "What happened?" Before the servant could answer, more footsteps came from outside the door. Then, a cold front officer wearing a military uniform with the insignia of a colonel on his shoulder appeared in the backyard. Behind him was a dense group of cold front soldiers with calm expressions and sharp eyes. Yang Taiju, who was about to angrily scold the intruder for intruding into his private residence, saw the intruder's face clearly. His original anger instantly disappeared and was replaced by a smile. "Ah, so it's Regiment Commander Teng. Please forgive me for not welcoming you when you've come to visit. The intruder was Ting Shan, the 1st Regiment commander of the Cold Front Army. Due to his seniority and fearlessness in battle, he was deeply trusted by Yang Chendong. Even in the entire Qiqian city, there were not many people who could make him lower his head. Normally, even his father, Yang Shan, who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time, would show him some respect. Seeing that it was this person who appeared in his residence, although Yang Taizhu was furious, he still didn't lose his temper. Ting Shan didn't immediately answer Yang Tiezhu's question. He only glanced behind Yang Taizhu. When he saw that 2 of the 4 women were only wearing a thin layer of green gauze while the other 2 were already clean, he frowned slightly. The 4 of you should immediately find clothes and put them on. It's really immoral to be like this. The 4 ladies were already frightened by the cold blade warriors who rushed in. When they heard Ting Shan's words, it was as if they had heard the sound of nature. They hurriedly retreated to look for clothes, but before that, they still looked at Yang Taizhu with pleading eyes. This person was their master. If he didn't say anything, they wouldn't dare to act rashly. Even though their current clothes were very embarrassing and they had already abandoned their dignity, they still stood there foolishly after a long time of getting used to it. All right, go and put on your clothes. Yang Tu forced a smile and said to the 4 women. Only then did the 4 beautiful figures quickly disappear. When Yang Taizhu was left standing there alone, he said to Ting Shan in a fawning tone, Regiment Commander Teng, I don't know what made you so angry. If there's anything I can do for you, I will definitely do my best. How about this? It's really tiring for the brothers to carry out a mission so late at night. Why don't you all receive 10 silvers as compensation? Yang Taizhu said as he observed the changes in Ting Shan. He was not too flustered in his heart. Firstly, his background was deep enough. His father was in the residence and he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs. His wife, Lin, was also in the palace serving the 5th Madam. She was his biggest trump card. If something happened to him, she would definitely not sit back and do nothing. Secondly, he was confident that no one could blackmail him. This was also why he was very confident in Chen Shuquan, the director of the Security Bureau. All along, the Security Bureau had been a unified system. Even the military had no right to question or investigate what they did in Crimson City. Of course, it was not that he did not think that something might have happened to Chen Shuquan, but he quickly denied it in his heart. Chen Shuquan was the director of the Security Bureau in Crimson City. He was the #1 existence. Who could investigate him? Who had the authority to investigate him? No matter what, even if something really happened to Chen Shuquan and he was investigated. What did that have to do with him? He was a good citizen. Although he had been working with Chen Shuquan, he did not leave any evidence. Even if something happened to the other party, there was no evidence to blame him. Not to mention, as long as something didn't happen immediately, with his father and Madam's relationship, after some interaction, he would definitely be able to turn big things into small ones. Yang Taizhu was very confident. When he looked at Ting Shan, he was no longer as afraid as before. He even openly mentioned the matter of bribery. From this, it could be seen how bold he was. Hearing that Yang Taizhu wanted to give the Lung Feng soldiers money for their hard work, Ting Shan chuckled. 10 silvers for a soldier, young Master Yang is really generous. These words were said with a smile, so Yang Taizhu was unable to see the other party's true intentions. He could only smile apologetically and continue. It's nothing, it's nothing. The Lung Feng soldiers have sacrificed so much for the entire city and island. It's only right for me to contribute a little. It's only right. It's only right? Then I ask young Master Yang to cooperate with us again and make a trip with us. Ting Shan still had a smile on his face as he spoke. At the same time, he was disgusted by Yang Tiezhu's hypocrisy. Since he was able to enter the Yang residence in the middle of the night, he naturally received orders and knew the cause and effect of the matter. Although he did not know the details, his intuition told him that Yang Taizhu was finished this time. Even the Yang family would not be any better. Since that was the case, why should he be polite to a person who was destined to be finished? Seeing that Ting Shan suddenly turned hostile and wanted to take him away, Yang Tiezhu's face completely changed. What are you doing? What are you doing? Commander Ting, are you mistaken? I'm one of your own people. I'm also an officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What authority do you have to take me away? Do you know the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Relying on his father's relationship, Yang Taizhu had indeed obtained a position in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He was not in charge of anything. To put it bluntly, he was just in charge of an official position. Now, this amulet had finally come into play. Seeing that Yang Taizhu did not cooperate and even used the name of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Teng Shan did not show the slightest bit of surprise. Instead, he smiled and said, "Young Master Yang, please cooperate with us. As for your identity as an officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we will give you a satisfactory answer very soon. Come, take him away." Teng Shan didn't want to waste any more time. After giving the order, 2 cold vanguard warriors with big waists walked out from behind him and rushed to Yang Taizhu's front. They lowered their heads and gave Yang Taizhu a firm press. Yang Taizhu, whose body was restrained and head was pressed down, did not give up resisting. He still shouted with all his might, let me go, I'm an officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You can't do this to me, you can't?" His shouts went from his courtyard to the main entrance of the Yang residence. Just as Teng Shan and the rest appeared here, a thunderous voice rang in their ears. "What are you doing?" Hearing this voice, Yang Taizhu, who was pressed down, seemed to have found his backbone. He raised his head abruptly and saw that the person who spoke was his father, Yang Shan. He immediately shouted, "Father, save me, father, save me. My son, don't worry. With your father here, no one can take you away from the residence. I have already arranged for someone to inform your wife. I believe she will not allow anyone to do this." Yang Shan's mountain-like voice rang out once again. At this moment, he displayed sufficient calmness. Although Yang Shan did not participate in some of Yang Taizhu's matters, it was impossible to say that he did not know anything. His son had done a lot of things under his name. He had more or less heard about it, but he did not interfere. Firstly, it was because he loved his son dearly. Secondly, his son would give him a lot of gold and silver every time. He used this to unite many officials and colleagues, which allowed him to do his work more easily. Not only did Yang Shan not feel ashamed of his son's actions, he even thought that this was a manifestation of his ability. After all, when he was an official in the Great Ming, who knew how many officials would take advantage of the situation to do things that crossed the line? When everyone did this, there was no need to criticize others. Therefore, he also thought that it was normal for the same thing to happen in Qichen City. Not to mention, his son was very scheming. Before doing anything, he first married the servant girl that the 5th madam had an important position in. This was equivalent to finding a strong ally and backer. His son was so careful in doing things so he would only be more at ease. However, tonight, Lung Feng suddenly entered the residence and indeed caught him off guard. However, he was not very frightened. Other than sending someone to inform Lin, this daughter-in-law with a strong background, he only needed to stall for time. For him, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, this was not a big deal. After saying this confidently, Yang Shan looked at Teng Shan and said sternly, "Regiment Commander Teng, my son is an official in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He's a cadre. He's an official who has been appointed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What happened to him should be investigated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so it is better not to trouble you." The Ministry of Foreign Affairs was clearly Yang Shan treated Yang Taizhu's matter as an internal matter of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so it should be handled and solved by them. Yang Shan was confident, but he thought about it carefully. Since Teng Shan had appeared here, how could it be possible that he did not have anything to rely on? Facing Yang Shan, this high official, Teng Shan's tone was very calm, but he was also very calm. He said in a businesslike manner, "I'm sorry, Minister Yang. I received the order to take young Master Yang away. As for what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs wants to do, that is your business. Please do not affect my work. I am also talking about work. I represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs." Yang Shan did not have the slightest intention of backing down. He also shouted in a thunderous voice, It was really difficult for him. He was not young, but he seemed to be very confident. Chapter 733. This time, Yang Shan wanted to use his seniority to oppress the other party. It was true that Yang Chendong had his eyes on Tingshan, but he was only a regiment commander. Facing the Minister of Foreign Affairs, there was still a lot of pressure. Just as the situation became tense, a thunderous voice suddenly came from behind the Lung Feng. "I'm sorry, Minister Yang, but you can no longer represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs." As the voice fell, a group of people walked out from behind the crowd. When they saw this group of people, all the Lung Feng involuntarily took a step back and showed a very respectful expression. This was because the three people who came were of high status. Two of them were of high status. They were Yang Wu, Lung Song, and Ma Dali. There was no need to say much about Yang Wu. When Yang Chendong was in Crimson City, he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs representative. His status was even higher than City Lord Yu Qian. Lung Song was the commander of the army's 1st Division and was known as the #1 person in the army. There were even rumors that the 1st Division would become the 1st Army. When that time came, if there were no accidents, the position of 1st Army Commander would fall on him. He was also the superior of all the Lung Feng in the city. His every move was naturally very eye-catching. The third person was Ma Dali. Although his name was very domineering and he looked very burly, he had an official status. He was the first deputy minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Someone once said that the people in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs should be eloquent and look kind. Only then would it be helpful for both sides to negotiate. A brawny man like Ma Dali shouldn't be in such a team. However, when everyone thought that it was inappropriate, Yang Chendong did the opposite. He appointed this person as the first deputy minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and gave the authority to Yang Shan. The reason why he did this was because what Yang Xia needed now was a strong minister of foreign affairs. Ma Dali fit this role perfectly. For example, the shout that Yang Shan could no longer represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was made by Ma Dali. When the three of them appeared, the pressure on Tingshan was greatly reduced. Yang Taizhu also lowered his head. He knew very well that this situation was not something his father could handle. Perhaps when Madame arrived, she could represent 5th Madame to deal with these people. Yang Taizhu placed his hopes on his wife. Yang Shan's expression changed rapidly at this moment, especially when he saw Ma Dali appear. His eyelids twitched violently, and his intuition told him that things were not going well. However, for the sake of his son's safety, he had to hold on until his daughter-in-law arrived. So it's 5th Master Yang and Division Master Leng. Your presence brings light to my humble abode, but why didn't you inform me in advance so that I could go out and welcome you? Yang Shan was indeed someone who often dealt with people. His expression quickly returned to normal. He smiled at Yang Wu and Lung Song, as if they were old friends who had a very good relationship. On the other hand, Ma Dali, who was standing beside the two of them, turned a blind eye. Ma Dali was only his assistant. Choosing to ignore him at this moment showed how domineering he was. Yang Shan wanted to use this to tell everyone that those who were not as high as him and those who were not as high as him should not speak anymore. He would not listen either. Both Yang Wu and Lung Song understood Yang Shan's little scheme. Perhaps they did not have this kind of experience before, nor had they experienced such a secret struggle. However, they had been in a high position for so many years. Even if they had not seen a pig being slaughtered, how could they not have eaten pork? In such a big environment, it was not something that could be avoided just because one wanted to. Some things had long been accustomed to. Not only did they understand Yang Shan's little scheme, but they also knew very well in their hearts. Lung Song smiled when he saw that Yang Shan had made his move. Then he said, "It's just to catch a person. How could we alarm Division Master Yang?" When Lung Song said this, Yang Shan also smiled. Anyone could tell that this was not a hearty laugh, but a sneer. Division Master Lung makes it sound so easy. This time, the person you want to catch is my son. As a parent, I think I have the right to know what is going on. However, I wonder if Division Master Lung can tell me what crime my son committed. Do you have any evidence? Yang Shan asked in return. His voice did not contain any emotional fluctuations, but anyone could tell that he was on the verge of exploding. It seemed that if a reasonable answer was not given, he would stop them from taking the person away. Who was Yang Shan? During the reign of Renchuanji, he became an official of the Great Ming Dynasty. Later, when Zhu Qizhen took over, he was already the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights. He had also experienced the Tumor Revolution. In the end, he went to the southern Ming Dynasty under the protection and help of Yang Qindong. Such an experienced person who was used to deceiving and deceiving each other had long since mastered the art of calmness. He wouldn't be so easily angered. However, he still pretended to be like this. It was tantamount to showing his determination to protect his son's safety. At the same time, he was stalling for time and waiting for his daughter-in-law to arrive. He was also testing Lung Song's confidence. He wanted to see what kind of evidence the other party had and what he needed to do if he wanted to protect his son. Yang Shan stood up. He had single-handedly carried Yang Wu and Lung Song, the two great mountains who had come to the manor. His boldness was enough, and his courage was admirable. If it was some ordinary small matter, he would have to give face and let him go if he personally stood up. What was pitiful was that this time, the order was personally given by the sixth young master. No matter how determined Yang Shan was, he could not overturn the situation this time. The reason why they did not use thunderous methods was because the batch of things that had been sent to the sea had not been shipped back. They could not be completely sure what was inside. Without any definite information, Lung Song was not in a hurry to make the final move. Instead, he chuckled and said, "This is strange. Doesn't your son know what he has done? Why is he asking me about it?" "Commander Lung, I did not do anything. You are accusing me wrongly. It is nothing more than your military being envious of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You are accusing me wrongly." Although Yang Taizhu, who was being escorted, was restrained, his mouth was not sealed. He could still speak. Seeing that his father was exonerating him, he took the opportunity to shout and shout. Of course, no one knew how true these words were. Most importantly, Yang Wu was here. If he heard some of these words, would he think that this matter was originally due to the conflict between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the military department, and that was why this happened? After Yang Tieju's accusation, many of the cold front soldiers' faces turned ugly. Teng Shan, for example, wished he could give Yang Shan a tight slap across the face and let him know the consequences of slandering the military and its soldiers. On the other hand, Lung Song was not in a hurry. He just stood there with his hands behind his back and smiled. No one knew better than him that this time, he took action completely because Director Yang San personally came and arranged it. He was just following orders. Why would he be afraid of being accused or even framed? Yang Shan and Yang Tieju's counterattack made the originally tense Yang family courtyard fall into silence. Suddenly, everyone stopped talking. They just looked at each other like they were waiting for something. Everyone was waiting. The Yang father and son were waiting for Lin Lin's arrival. As long as she came, she could represent the fifth young mistress to express her attitude. She was one of the matriarchs. When the master was not around, no one could shake the position of the matriarch. She would have the effect of changing the situation. Yang Wu and Lung Song were waiting for the news from the new dock. As long as the cargo ship was transported back, Chen Shuquan would be caught and betrayed Yang Taizhu. Then, they could start the next step of the operation. At that time, no one would be able to stop them. While waiting like this, the three cargo ships on the new dock of Chichen City began to dock again. The dozens of large carts of goods on them were also transported back to the new dock one by one. Director Chen Shuquan, who was about to leave, was stunned by the scene in front of him. According to his habit, every time the goods were transported out, he would stay at the new dock for a while. After confirming that there were no other problems, he would leave. After all, it was the goods of the Security Bureau. As the director, it was reasonable for him to stay a little longer. Of course, he would stay a little longer because Chen Shuquan was cautious. He was worried that someone would have designs on the cargo ships of the Security Bureau. If he did not stay here, what would he do if something went wrong? And it was this long stop that allowed him to see a good show. The 3 cargo ships that had just set out sailed back, and even the Cold Front Navy came back with the ships. The ships were still the same ships, and the escorts were still the same people. The appearance of this scene made Chen Shuchuan's heart skip a beat. He had a hunch that something bad was going to happen. He pretended to be calm and walked towards the 3 ships of goods that were docked at the dock. He was still far away, but his shout could be heard. What happened? Why are the goods being transported back? Director Chen, there was an order from above. We don't know what's going on. A Cold Front platoon leader in charge of escorting the goods said with a salute. The platoon leader really didn't know what happened. Due to the difference in status between the 2 of them, he was telling the truth. Chen Shuquan saw the platoon leader's respect. He seemed to see hope. His face changed and he said sternly, "Order? Who gave the order? Do you know that this is what the Security Bureau wants? There are a lot of things involved. How can they stop just like that? Send the goods out immediately. As for the order, I will take it for you. I promise that you will not be punished." Chapter 734. Chen Shuchuan's thinking was simple. As long as the goods were sent out of the sea and handed over to the people arranged by Yang Taizhu overseas, there would be no evidence. At that time, he could just say that he didn't know anything. Without evidence, no one could casually convict him. No matter what, Chen Shuquan was still the head of the Security Bureau's office in Crimson City. His words were still very authoritative. Hearing this, platoon leader Leng Feng hesitated. After all, offending the head of the Security Bureau was not a wise move. If he really wanted to target him, how could he, a small platoon leader, resist? Platoon leader Leng Feng was still in a mental struggle, hesitating about what to do. On the new pier, another group of people had appeared. The leader was a young man with delicate features. The moment he appeared, he laughed heartily. "Brother Chen, you have such great authority. Leng Feng doesn't belong to our Security Bureau, yet you can order him around as you please. You're really amazing." Who is it? Who is secretly making sarcastic remarks? Come out if you have the ability. As soon as the sarcastic remarks were heard, Chen Shuchuan's face darkened. He suddenly turned his head, looking like he was looking for someone to punish. Chen Shuquan did indeed have such confidence. Director Yang San was not in Crimson City, so he was the highest-ranking person in charge of the Security Bureau here. From a certain point of view, he could exist side by side with military chiefs like Leng Song and Gao Xiong. Even if the people from the political department came, he could still wrestle with them. Due to the confidentiality rules, the Security Bureau was independent of any system and was directly under the 6th Young Master's jurisdiction. In other words, even if Yang Wuyi appeared here, if he was unyielding, he could still face him head-on. Of course, all of this was limited to the other party not receiving the 6th Young Master's orders. Thinking about how he dared to face Yang Wuyi, what a proud existence he was. It was no wonder that when he heard people talking about him like this, he immediately shouted like a plucked rooster. "Ha, Brother Chen, I haven't been hiding in the dark. I've been standing here all this time. It's just that your standards are too high and you didn't notice me." As the laughter continued, Che Chao led a group of 20 members of the Security Bureau's operations team that had been transferred from various places to Chen Shuquan. A group of people strode over. Because it was dark, they couldn't see clearly, but Chen Shuchuan's expression had already begun to change. Since the other party was so fearless, his identity must not be simple. Moreover, the goods were right in front of him. How was he going to explain himself under such conclusive evidence? Chen Shuchuan's brain spun rapidly as he formulated various countermeasures in his mind. At this time, Che Chao had already strode in front of him. With the help of the street lights on the pier, they could finally see each other clearly. At this moment, Chen Shuchuan's face was filled with shock. "Che Chao, how could it be you? Why can't it be me?" Che Chao, who was far calmer than Chen Shuquan, had a smile on his face as he slowly asked, "Brother Chen, why are you so nervous? Could it be that my appearance has delayed your good fortune?" When he suddenly saw Che Chao, Chen Shuquan was indeed shocked. He could not understand why the other party would appear in Crimson City, and why he did not receive any news at all. However, he soon calmed down. After all, the other party's level was lower than his. Even so, what was there to be afraid of? Perhaps the other party had come to Crimson City to settle some personal matters, or perhaps to visit family and friends. At this point, it must be said that the majority of the staff of the Security Bureau lived in the dark, and the mental pressure was immense. Therefore, every year, they would have a normal holiday to return to society and be an ordinary person. Otherwise, they would be driven crazy. Qin Shuquan thought that Che Chao was probably on vacation, and he just happened to appear in Crimson City, which was why this scene was happening in front of him. It could be said that he was comforting himself, but in short, Qin Shuquan quickly calmed down and strode towards Che Chao. As he walked, he said, "Brother Che, it's not that I want to nag you, but since you've come to Crimson City, you should at least greet me so that I can do my part as a host, right?" Chen Shuquan took the initiative to get close to Che Chao, and Che Chao also smiled and replied, "Hey, I know that Brother Chen is busy, so I didn't come to disturb you. Please don't blame me." Che Chao being so polite made Chen Shuquan feel more at ease, and the smile on his face grew wider. "What do you mean by disturb? You don't treat me as one of your own. Just based on this point, you should be punished. How about this? I'll punish you with 3 cups of wine tonight." "Ha, let's go, I'll find a place to welcome you." As he spoke, Qin Shuquan's large hand had already landed on Che Chao's shoulder. Those who didn't know would think that their relationship was very good. Che Chao, who was originally cupping his fists and apologizing, was waiting for Qin Shuquan's hand to land on his shoulder. The smile on his face suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a cold expression. His large hand suddenly grabbed Qin Shuquan's arm from his chest, and then with a twist, he pulled Qin Shuquan into his embrace, and a Type 54 firearm was pressed against Qin Shuquan's temple. "I'm sorry, Director Qin, I have important matters to attend to, so I don't have the time to drink with you." The sudden change in the situation made Qin Shuquan's subordinates, who were watching everything with a smile, stunned. Then, under the conditioned reflex of their years of training, a few of them reached into their waists, pulled out the knives on their waist, and shouted, "What are you doing? Release Director Qin immediately." Don't be agitated, let's observe the situation first." Dong Hui, who was mixed in the crowd, played a role at this time. He stretched out his arms, stopping everyone from being impulsive, and gave a few of his subordinates a look. Under Dong Hui's lead, a few of his subordinates also joined the ranks of persuading everyone not to be impulsive, causing the originally tense atmosphere to be suppressed. At this time, Qin Shuquan was in Che Chao's embrace, facing his subordinates. Seeing Dong Hui's performance, his eyes seemed to be about to pop out. But at this time, he also knew that this was not the time to fight with Dong Hui. His opponent was still Che Chao. "Old brother Che, what are you doing? Do you know that everything you're doing is offending your superiors? Do you know, according to our internal family law, if you do this, not only will you die, your family won't get any benefits? Let me tell you, let me go immediately, and for the sake of our previous relationship, I can pretend that nothing happened." Chen Shuquan was still suppressing people with his power, trying to make Che Chao stop. But now that he had the initiative, how could Che Chao easily let go? He looked at the back of Qin Shuquan's head with a smile, as if he was looking at an idiot. "Director Qin, things have already turned out like this, don't you know how to repent? Tell me, where are these things going to be shipped?" "Of course it's to the Security Bureau." Qin Shuquan gritted his teeth and said, "Security Bureau? Why don't I know about it?" Che Chao asked again. "Your rank is not high enough, of course you don't know. Let me tell you, this is the director's arrangement, and it's classified as a top secret. It's already a mistake for you to know this now, do you understand?" Relying on his higher rank, Qin Shuquan spouted nonsense. Now, as long as he could get through this, he would find a random crime to take down Che Chao. In short, he would not give Che Chao a chance to ask Yang San, he wanted to silence him. Chen Shuquan was still thinking about what to do once he had the initiative, when a very familiar voice came from behind him. "I don't understand? I've never given such an order, but I don't know who you heard it from." "Of course you don't understand, this is the Bureau." Chen Shuquan was about to say something with an arrogant look, but suddenly he was stunned. This voice was so familiar, it sounded like the bureau directors. Che Chao seemed to know what he was thinking. He loosened his grip slightly, allowing him to turn his head. When he turned his head, he saw Yang San in front of him with a fierce face. Immediately, Chen Shuquan's legs turned to jelly, and he could no longer stand. With a plop, he sat on the ground. The main culprit had appeared, and Chen Shuquan knew that everything was over. The irrefutable evidence was right in front of him. He was afraid that no matter what excuse he found, it would be useless. When he thought of the director's means and the family law of the Security Bureau, it was really difficult for him to die even if he wanted to. His face turned pale at this moment. Bureau Director, I was wrong. Yang Tiju forced me to do everything. I was too greedy. Yang San didn't say another word, so Chen Shuquan confessed everything. Now, he no longer hoped for a future, or even to live. He only hoped for a quick death and not to implicate his family. He was very grateful. Chen Shuquan was so cooperative, and Yang San stood there and listened coldly. After listening to Chen Shuquan, he sighed softly. Chen Shuquan, you've been in the Security Bureau for a long time, and your name is on the 6th Young Masters list. Do you know that your future is limitless? Do you know how many generations your descendants will be proud of having you as their ancestor? But now, because of your wrong decision, everything is gone. Yang San could not say whether he was lamenting or feeling pity for Chen Shuquan. He shook his head several times. It was obvious that this result made him a little sad. After all, it was not easy to cultivate a talent, and they had known each other for so many years, it was impossible to say that they had no feelings for each other. Now that he had made a mistake, a big mistake, it also meant the end of their friendship. It was no wonder that Yang San was a little sad. Yes, I know that I have done something wrong this time. I am willing to confess everything, and I am willing to testify. I only hope that the director will not implicate my family and give me a quick death. Chen Shuquan could feel the sadness in Yang San's heart. How could he feel good in his heart? But since he had embarked on this path, there was no turning back. At this time, he could only use the last trace of the director's feelings for him to make his own request. Chapter 735. Cooperate well, I promise I won't implicate your family. Yang San knew what Chen Shuquan was worried about. Perhaps this was the only thing he could do for the other party. He patted the other party's shoulder lightly. Che Chao, I'll leave this to you. He will cooperate well with you and tell you everything we want to know. Director, don't worry, I'll get the confession immediately. Che Chao patted his chest and promised. There was a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. The chance to make a big contribution had come. As long as he did this well, he could get promoted as he wished and become the new director of the Crimson City Security Bureau. One was eager to make a contribution, the other was eager to atone for his sins. The two of them got together, and the process of taking notes and testimonies went very smoothly. In just half an hour, a clear file appeared in front of Yang San, who was in the duty room. After taking a quick look, Yang San sighed softly. Send someone to inform Yang Wu in the palace. It's time to reel in the net. Also, get the action team to move out. All the officials related to this matter must not be let off. Arrest them all. Yes, I'll do it immediately. Che Chao replied and turned to leave. This night, Crimson City was destined to not be peaceful. Palace. This palace occupied a large area and was built magnificently. It seemed to be an independent existence from Crimson City. Although the master was rarely here, no one dared to disrespect this place. So much so that anyone who walked out of this place could issue orders, and they all had a higher status than anyone else. Lin, this woman with average looks and beauty was at most 30%, was one of the people who often went in and out of the palace. With her eloquence that could make a dead person come back to life, she gained the trust of the 5th Madame Su Maner and became the representative of the 5th Madame. Originally, Su Maner had a personal maid named Xiao Yun. However, this maid was a little lazy. In the end, the purchasing of the necessities of the palace fell to Lin, who had been by Su Maner's side since she came to Crimson City. Lin Lin was a person who knew how to conduct herself. Not only did she know how to say nice things to make Su Munaer laugh heartily, she also had a very good relationship with the other maids. In this regard, her husband, Yang Taizhu, was also very willing to spend money. With money, she could naturally bribe many people to do things for her. It was precisely because Lin Lin usually paid attention to the people around her that she was able to rope in more people. When the Yang mansion was surrounded, Yang Shan arranged for his trusted steward to leave through the secret passage in the mansion and come to the palace. Soon, a servant girl who had received favor handed the news to Lin Lin. Lin Lin, who suddenly received the news, was shocked. What's more, there will be people who want to take the opportunity to attack the 6th young master's prestige. This is a big matter. The 6th young master is not in the city all year round, and the development of the city is so prosperous. It's hard to tell what's in a person's heart. Su Munaer did not pay much attention to the previous words. Even if it involved herself, she did not pay much attention to it. It was enough for her husband to know what kind of person she was. As for the opinions of others, she did not care at all. Because without her husband, she was probably a dead person now. It was hateful that she believed the one-sided words of a villain and even had delusions of killing her husband. Now that she thought about it, she really regretted it. All of this made Su Munaer extremely grateful to Yang Chendong. She would not allow anyone to threaten her husband's safety, even if her reputation was damaged. Now that she heard that someone actually had such an idea, how could she not be angry? She glared and said, "How preposterous! Is it true that because my husband is not around, some people want to indulge in wild fantasies?" "Yes, madam. This matter is not a small matter. Please make a decision." Seeing that Su Munaer had fallen into a trap, Lin Lin was overjoyed and continued to instigate her. Lin Lin was asking what to do next. Should she help the Yang family? In this way, it would be equivalent to indirectly helping her. Su Munaer understood the hidden meaning in his words. After thinking for a while, she said, "Then go and take a look. If they are trying to frame you, then let them investigate seriously. If they really did do it, then even you are not allowed to speak carelessly." Su Munaer was still smart. She did not make a conclusion about things that she did not understand. Instead, she wanted to base it on facts. However, how could she know that the starting point of any matter might be good, but in the end, it depended on who was carrying it out. If the person carrying it out was someone who could not distinguish right from wrong, wanting to have a fair decision would become a delusion. Lin Lin was waiting for this sentence. She immediately agreed, stood up, and walked out of the bedroom. At this moment, she was no longer acting like a weak woman just now. Instead, she was filled with pride and confidence. "Since you dare to go against my husband's family, then you can wait to be dealt with." After receiving Su Munaer's support, Lin Lin seemed to have changed into a different person. When she walked out of the palace, her expression was filled with confidence. She wanted to use the name of a tiger. What could others do about it? Leading 4 maids, Lin Lin walked in front with large strides. Her arrogant appearance made her look like a master. Along the way, all the maids who met her stopped in their tracks from afar. When they got closer, they lowered their heads and asked questions with a fawning and respectful expression. From afar, she could see the outer gate of the palace. As long as she walked past it, she would reach the outer palace. Although there were many guards there in charge of security, with Lin Lin's status, they did not even have the courage to check. It could be said that once she passed through the gate, she would be free to fly. Lin Lin's face subconsciously revealed a victorious smile. However, at this moment, a light shout sounded behind her. "Are you Lin Lin? Wait a moment." Someone suddenly shouted her name behind her. Out of instinct, Lin Lin stopped in her tracks. When she turned around, she saw a group of people coming from afar. She recognized the leader. It was First Madam's personal maid, Xiao Qing. Beside Xiao Qing was the palace's head maid, Tai Jie. Sister Xiao Qing. After seeing that it was the young miss, Lin Lin immediately put away her arrogant expression and showed a very well-behaved appearance. She even intentionally bowed. This was the etiquette that only a servant would show to a master. It was no wonder that Lin Lin was so careful. Although she was valued by the fifth madam and was considered a superior existence among the maids, she was still nothing in front of Xiaoqing. She was first madam's favorite and had grown up with first madam. Putting aside the fact that their relationship had been nurtured since they were young, Xiaoqing's husband, Sun Chuang, was already a battalion officer. Even the sixth young master had taken note of him. It could be said that his future was bright. Normally, such a person could open her own residence and be a mistress. However, she didn't. Instead, she stayed by the eldest madam's side and served her wholeheartedly. Just based on this, which maid in the palace didn't respect her? Which maid dared to give her a hard time? The sudden appearance of little Qing forced Lin Lin to stop her footsteps and stand there with a respectful expression. Chapter 736. Little Qing took small steps and soon arrived in front of Lin Lin. She first looked her up and down and then asked with a smile, "Little sister Lin Lin, it's so late. Where are you going?" If someone else asked her this question, Lin Lin could choose not to answer. They were all maids. One served the first madam and the other served the fifth madam. They usually minded their own business. But since it was little Qing who asked the question, Lin Lin had to answer. "It's like this. The fifth madam has something for me to do. So I left the palace late at night." "I see. Since it's like this, you don't have to go. Go back and wait for the news." Little Qing nodded and then said slowly, "HM?" Lin Lin was also confused by this sentence. She looked up and said to little Qing, "Sister little Qing, I don't know if you didn't hear clearly. I went out this time on the fifth madam's orders." I know. That's why I told you to go back and wait." Little Qing didn't wait for her to finish and stopped her. Then she turned her head and looked at the 8 maids behind her, especially the leader, Tai Die, and said, "Listen well. Send little sister little Qing and the others back. Don't wander around outside." After saying this casually, little Qing turned and left. She didn't even want to explain. The 8 maids behind her all stayed and stared at Lin Lin and the others. It seemed that if they didn't listen, then don't blame them for being rude. She was stopped. Even though it was little Qing who gave this order, Lin Lin was still a bit unconvinced. Although she could go back and ask fifth madam again, it would inevitably delay time. Who knew if there would be any changes in the situation? So her eyes moved and she looked at the 8 maids surrounding her. She smiled and said, "Sisters, we're all maids and it's not easy for us. Why don't you make it easy? If you do me a favor, I will remember it in my heart." As she spoke, Lin Lin took out a stack of banknotes from her sleeves. The smallest banknote on the stack was worth 100 taels. She took out 800 taels. One had to say that Lin Lin was very generous. If it was any other time, the maids below would be beaming with joy and would say some words of blessings as they received the banknotes. However, it was a pity that this time, the trick that worked every single time did not work. The faces of the 8 maids didn't change at all. The leader, Tai Die, acted as if she didn't see the banknotes and said, "Lin Lin, you'd better not make things difficult for us. Be obedient. Otherwise, once we start fighting, it will be really embarrassing." After getting the cold shoulder, Lin Lin's face became very ugly. She gritted her teeth and said, "Okay, then I'll go find the fifth madam. I don't believe that there's no justice in the palace." As she spoke, she turned around angrily and walked straight to the palace where the fifth madam was resting. At this time, Lin Lin didn't know that her backer, the fifth madam, had been invited to the first madam's palace. Not only Madame Wu, but Madame Shui, the third madam, was also there. At this time, they were reading a telegram sent by Yang Chendong, which talked about some things about Yang Taiju. Su Monair had just left when she received a message saying that the first madam had invited her. In the days when Yang Chendong was not around, the master of the palace was naturally the first madam, Hu Yen. Now that the first madam had given the order, not to mention that she had not yet rested, even if she had rested, she still had to get dressed and get up. Su Monair didn't dare to delay. With the help of the maid, Xiao Yun, she put on some light makeup and rushed to the first madam's palace with a group of maids. As soon as she entered the hall, She saw that Hu Yen and Madame Shui had already taken their seats. "Fifth sister, you're here? Come and sit." Seeing Su Maner appear, Hu Yan's face didn't have the slightest hint of anger or condemnation because she already knew that Lin Lin's actions were carried out behind Su Maner's back. In fact, this sister of hers didn't know anything. Su Maner really didn't know anything. Since the first madam called her, she naturally sat down. Then she smiled and asked Hu Yen, "Sister, what happened?" Something must have happened for them to call her over so late at night. Su Maner's IQ wasn't low. She didn't think that the sisters would gather at this time just to chat about their daily lives. This time, before Hu Yen could speak, Madame Shui had already passed the telegram to her. "Fifth sister, you should take a look at this first." With a face full of doubt, Su Maner took the telegram from the maid, Xiao Yun. When her gaze fell on the contents of the telegram, Su Maner's expression quickly became a little ugly. Perhaps a telegram to others could be sent more simply, as long as the meaning was clear. But how could Yang Chendong be stingy with his words when sending a telegram to his wife? In this telegram, Yang Chendong explained everything very clearly. He even mentioned Lin Lin's name. Although some things couldn't be described in such detail like when they met, the mention of Lin Lin's name already explained a lot of things. While Su Maner was still digesting this news, Hu Yen had already opened her mouth and said, "This time, my husband is really angry. He risked his life at the front lines to fight for the world, working hard to save more Han people. But we still have to worry about our rear. Speaking of which, it's really our fault." It was a simple sentence, but Su Maner's expression froze when she heard it. She knew that she had really done something wrong this time. She had actually mistakenly trusted a maidservant and unknowingly passed on such a wrong signal to others, which had almost led to a disaster. Thinking that if it wasn't for her bad judgment, she wouldn't have made her husband worry about this. Su Maner felt waves of self-blame. Just as Su Maner was still accepting the condemnation in her heart, Xiao Yun suddenly entered the hall. She first greeted them and bowed. Then she said, "Madam, third madam, fifth madam, Sun Chuang of the Imperial Army has something to discuss with you." "Your husband is here. Let him in," Hu Yen said jokingly. Hu Yen said jokingly. From this point, it could be seen that she was not very angry. She, who had lived in the Hu family since she was young, was even more tired of hearing about all kinds of struggles. She had seen many servants doing bad things in the name of their master. It was precisely because of this that she didn't find it strange. Lin Lin was guilty, so she would be punished. As for fifth sister, after this incident, she should be more careful when using people. This was equivalent to having an effect. Xiao Yun, who was teased by her master, blushed. After agreeing, she went out to pass on the message. Soon, Sun Chuang, who had the rank of major, walked into the hall. He strode in, but once he entered the hall, he knelt on the ground without raising his head. He knew very well what kind of status the three people in front of him had. If he casually looked at them, it would be a sin. Sun Chuang of the Imperial Army greets first madam, third madam, and fifth madam. A loud and clear voice sounded in the hall. "Get up. What's the matter at this time of night?" Hu Yen sat at the head of the table and asked in the manner of a host. Reporting to first madam, news just came from the front. The matter of Yang Tieju's smuggling has been confirmed without a doubt. Not only that, his collaborator also said that there are a large number of weapons and armors in the Yang residence. This subordinate has come to temporarily close the palace gates in advance. "Please allow me to do so." Sun Chuang's head was still lowered, but he did say a fact and result that the women did not expect. "Are they going to rebel?" When Hu Yen heard this, she was also shocked. It was common for subordinates to do some evil things in the name of their master, and it was also very difficult to truly prohibit it. However, the matter at hand involved military supplies, so the nature of the matter had changed. Among the three women, when Su Maner heard this, she was so scared that her face turned pale. Even the newspaper in her hand fell to the ground. At this moment, she finally knew what kind of end she had gotten for her nepotism. And it was her husband who had sensed all of this. If her husband had not seen through everything, what kind of result would there be? Would there be a day when someone would threaten the safety of the palace? If her two sisters were really hurt because of this, wouldn't she be guilty of the most heinous crimes? At this moment, Su Munaer hated Lin Lin to the core. She had trusted her so much, but she had indeed used her name to help the evildoer. Something big had almost happened. It was truly unforgivable. Third Madame's expression also changed abruptly. Then, she looked at First Madame Hu Yen and said, "Sister, the matter isn't that serious, right? Isn't Yang Wu at Yang Shan's place? He shouldn't give them a chance to resist. Isn't it better to be on guard?" Hu Yen shook her head lightly. It was better to be safe than sorry. When she thought about how someone really threatened the safety of the palace, it was fine if something happened to her and the others, but she was afraid that it would cause her husband to go crazy. If that happened, many plans would be disrupted. This was the most terrible thing. Her husband was risking his life at the front. It was fine if they could not provide any help, but they definitely could not be a hindrance at the back. Thinking of this, Hu Yen said decisively, "All right, we'll do as Battalion Commander Sun says. Seal the palace for now. If there aren't enough troops, you can deploy troops nearby. In a while, I will ask Xiao Yun to give you the token that my husband gave me." "Yes, Sun Chuang understands." Sun Chuang left with large strides. Holding the token that Hu Yen gave him, he mobilized a cold front battalion to protect the palace. And inside the palace, the three madams also returned to their own palaces. Su Munaer also returned, but her expression was not good. Thinking about what she had said before the three sisters separated, she would definitely give them an explanation. On the way back, she clenched her right fist several times, loosened it, and clenched it again. Chapter 737. Su Munaer had been through a lot since she was young, and her willpower had long been tempered to be very firm. Otherwise, she would not have attempted to assassinate Yang Qindong. But recently, or rather, ever since she came to Crimson City, she was completely protected. Every day, there were people serving her in the palace. Over time, her wildness had been worn away, and she had become much purer. She originally thought that her life would be like this. One day, when she gave birth to a child for her husband, she would be happy for the rest of her life. But now, it seemed that conflicts were everywhere. If she was careless, she might be consigned to eternal damnation. Fortunately, her husband was reasonable and understood people's hearts. Her sisters were also kind-hearted and did not have the intention to blame her. If it was someone else, this matter would probably be enough to put her to death, and she would never be able to make a comeback. Since her husband understood her so well, then not only did she have to clean up the beginning and end of this matter, she also had to do some other things. She was lazy from staying in the palace every day. It was time for her to stretch her muscles and bones. As she thought about it, she returned to her palace. From afar, she saw Lin Lin, who had an aggrieved expression, walking over. "Madam, I wanted to leave the palace, but I was stopped by Xiao Qing." "How is she stopping me?" "She is clearly not giving you face." "Xiao Yun, take her down and slap her 30 times. Without waiting for Lin Lin to finish speaking, Su Munaer's voice sounded. At this time, this woman was still trying to sow discord in front of her. Her intentions were truly hateful. Xiao Yun, who was at the side, did not know what had happened. She only knew that Madame's expression was not good after she returned. Now that there was an order, she did not dare to disobey. She brought 2 maids to Lin Lin's side, and a series of loud slapping sounds rang out. Lin Lin was still thinking that this time, she was ordered to leave the palace. This time, 5th Madame would definitely stand on her side. Who would have thought that there would be such an outcome? When the palm hit her face, she did not react. It was only after being slapped a few times that she became clear-headed and cried out that she had been wronged. At this time, Su Munaer had already entered the inner chamber. Xiao Yun followed by the side with a face full of confusion and doubt. Su Munaer trusted this maidservant who had followed her for many years. She didn't hide anything and told her the gist of the matter. Xiao Yun, who heard the truth, was also shocked. There's actually such a thing? Doesn't that mean Lin Lin is also one of the accomplices? Then, what are we? Yes, what are we? Su Maner repeated this sentence with a bitter smile on her face. Su Maner finally knew how much pressure this matter would bring her. Even if after this matter, her husband did not blame her, what would those maids in the palace think? What would those high officials in Crimson City think? It seemed that she had to do something. Xiao Yun, go and interrogate Lin Lin with Captain Tai later. I want to know what she did behind our backs. Su Maner bit her lips and said, Yes, Mum. Xiao Yun also knew the importance of this matter and hurriedly agreed. However, she still had some doubts as she asked, what if Lin Lin doesn't say it? She has a lot of ideas. We can use any method. She won't keep it a secret. Oh right, doesn't she still have a father outside the palace who drinks every day? If she doesn't say it, then she will be harming her father. As Su Maner spoke, her eyes revealed a terrifying aura. People say that if you don't experience some things, you will never grow up and mature. And this time, Su Maner had obviously grown up a lot. Hearing that even her family was being threatened, Xiao Yun knew what to do. And with her father's threat, she was not afraid that Lin Lin would not say it. But what should she do after saying it? She had no choice but to ask, how should we deal with Lin Lin? Kill her. As long as she cooperates, you can tell her that her father can still live out his remaining years in peace. She seemed to have used the last bit of her strength to say this. Su Maner waved her hand at Xiao Yun, meaning that she was tired and needed a good rest. Xiao Yun left. But she did not know that Su Maner, who was in the bedroom, was not sleeping. Instead, she was thinking of a very big plan. A department that would eventually be comparable to the Security Bureau became a prototype that night. After reporting it to Yang Qindong, it was given a new name, the Central Intelligence Agency. And the boss of this Central Intelligence Agency was Su Maner. Its appearance would greatly make up for some of the negligence of the Security Bureau. In the future, it would make countless military achievements. This was probably something that even Yang Qindong did not foresee. After Lin Lin was slapped 30 times, she, who had a mouth full of blood, was dragged to the woodshed at the side. There, Xiao Yun set up a temporary torture chamber. Whether it was coercion or enticement, in the end, she found out everything she wanted to know. The result was still very gratifying. Lin Lin was only after Yang Tieju's family background and money. She did not really participate in what he did. This made Su Maner, who knew everything after the fact, heave a sigh of relief. She was guilty, but her sin was not that big. She could finally face Yang Qindong and her sisters. Lin Lin was finished. The father and son of the Yang family, who were still unaware of all this, still placed their hopes on him. After waiting for a long time, no one came. Instead, a secret agent from the Security Bureau came to the Yang residence. He came to Yang Wu's ear and whispered something softly. Yang Wu was originally standing there calmly, but after hearing the whispered news, his entire person became unwell. His eyes widened as he looked at Yang Shan and the captured Yang Ti. Suddenly he laughed out loud. Good, very good. I didn't expect that you were not only after money, but also have greater ambitions. Search. Turn the entire Yang residence upside down 3 times. Even a tile must be smashed into pieces. Absolutely not allow any item to remain intact. Yang Wu suddenly gave this ruthless order, and the Lung Feng soldiers who came with him agreed and began to move. Facing the ruthless Lung Feng warriors, Yang Shan wanted to stop them, but he realized that it was useless. He could not help but ask Yang Wu, Master Yang Wu, what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this? Why are you asking me about the good things you did? Yang Wu's face was overflowing with anger. He had just received news from Bureau Chief Yang San. Chen Shuquan said that once when he was drunk, Yang Taiju boasted that he had prepared some weapons and armor in his residence. If things changed, they could cause havoc in Rayman City and even threaten the safety of the palace in order to protect themselves. Once the news came out, Yang Wu could no longer remain calm. If such a thing really happened, then he had let down the young master's trust. In that case, even if he died, he would not be able to thank the world. Facing such a person, how could he still be courteous at this moment? Yang Wu was angry, so the Lung Feng warriors also began to act. The huge Yang residence was quickly turned over and many things were found. There were more than 4 million taels of gold and silver notes. This was equivalent to Baiming's or Nanming's annual income. After Yang Taizhu started smuggling, he had earned so much in just a few times. This did not even include the huge expenses. From this, one could see how big the profits were. Other than the gold and silver, there were actually 2088 rifles, 300 sharp swords and spears, hundreds of sets of armor, and dozens of boxes of bullets and grenades. When these things were piled up like a small mountain in the courtyard of the Yang residence, Yang Shan finally lost his imposing manner and fell to the ground with a plop. At this moment, Yang Shan finally understood how big his son's ambition was. He also finally understood what it meant to raise a tiger for calamity. It was just that he was raising his son. The moment these things came out, Yang Taizhu lowered his arrogant head. He knew that he was done for. On the other hand, Lung Song was sweating profusely. He didn't dare to imagine what would happen if these weapons suddenly launched an attack. Even if Crimson City did not fall into chaos, it would be difficult to protect some important institutions. Investigate, investigate, investigate for me. How did these things appear here? These are not things that can be bought with money. Yang Wu roared as he looked at the grenades and 88 rifles. Then, his gaze landed on Yang Shan. On behalf of the 6th Young Master, I announce that from now on, you are no longer the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Men, take him away and lock him in jail. Ma Dali will be the acting Minister of Foreign Affairs. You will also be in charge of the interrogation of Yang Shan. As Yang Shan's deputy, Ma Dali understood his superior very well. Letting someone who understood you to interrogate you would achieve twice the result with half the effort. Yang Wu did not doubt this point. The Yang family was finished. And that night, some people who had close ties with the Yang family were implicated. More than 50 officials were arrested. Among them were a few company cadres and a battalion commander from Cold Front. And this matter had only just begun. As the interrogation progressed, more and more people were implicated. Even the Bureau's Director General, Xin Yu, was invited away by the Security Bureau the next morning. The person in charge of the interrogation was none other than Director General Yang San. Using interrogation instead of interrogation meant that Yang San was under Yang Chendong's orders to reprimand Xin Yu. The gist of his words was that his job was very special. It was a job that offended others, but he did not have to be afraid of offending others because he had the 6th Young Master backing him up. He knew how hard it was for him and how he was a person. But if he was afraid of offending others, he could quit his job. He could go home and retire. He could also be given a leisurely department to pass the days. But in short, he had to do his job well as long as he was in office. Otherwise, he would not occupy this position. Facing Director General Yang San, who was under the orders of the Duke of Loyalty, Xin Yu did not dare be careless. He immediately nodded to express his understanding and promised that such a thing would not happen again. If he encountered any injustice or lawlessness, he would be the first to stand up. At the same time, he thanked the Duke of Loyalty for his trust in him. Chapter 738. People are like this. Once they are in a high position, they are not willing to give up their power. Xin Yu was like this. After experiencing the prestige of the Monitoring Bureau chief, he was reluctant to leave. Even if he knew that what he was about to do would offend a lot of people, he was still unwilling to leave. Since Xin Yu had already expressed his stance, Yang San also allowed him to make his choice. However, before they parted ways, he reminded him, "This matter is not over yet. There will be others who will come looking for you. You just have to wait. I hope that you can perform well." He did not say who was looking for him, nor did he say what it was about. Yang San left, leaving Xin Yu with a mystery in his heart. This mystery did not last long. Just as he was about to get off work, someone from the Security Bureau came to invite Xin Yu to the famous Min Lufu restaurant in the city for a banquet. Xin Yu knew about Min Lufu. Usually, many people with status were willing to hold their banquets there. He also heard that the background of the restaurant was very strong, but outsiders did not know the specifics. Since Yang San sent someone to inform him, and since he had already said hello, Xinyu would naturally go. After getting off work, he went straight to Min Lufu restaurant. When he arrived at the restaurant, which covered an area of more than 10,000 square meters, there were already people waiting for him outside. When they saw him arrive, they led him straight to the third floor. In the private room on the third floor, when Xinyu opened the door and entered, he realized that he was not the first to arrive. The 1st Division commander of the Navy, Gao Xiong, and the political department's Mo Qingyu had arrived before him. Gao Xiong was the commander of the Navy's 1st Division. It was said that the Duke of Loyalty wanted to expand the division into an army. If nothing unexpected happened, this person would become the 1st Navy commander. Ji Qingyu was one of the members of the political department. He was also the political commissar of the Army's 1st Division. There were already rumors that he would become the 1st Vice Minister of the political department. One of them represented the Navy's 1st Division, and the other represented the Army's 1st Division. Their arrival seemed to explain some things. When the three of them met, they naturally had to exchange greetings. However, their personal relationship wasn't very deep. This had to do with their identities and statuses, and also because they each represented different forces. It was impossible for them to sit together and drink and chat merrily. Where there are people, there are rivers and lakes. This sentence was also very appropriate to use here. Even though Xianxia hadn't been established for a long time, and many of them were newcomers, fighting seemed to be something that humans were born with. It was the kind that didn't need to be taught. You could learn it very well and play it very smoothly. Since there were benefits, there would be fights. When it came to who could get more and who could only get less, a struggle was inevitable. Yang Chendong couldn't do anything about this. Of course, this was something he was happy to see. The people below him were all as good as one person. This was not good for his management in the future. The private room was very spacious, at least 100 square meters. The three of them sat in 3 different directions, and soon there was silence. Perhaps they were all wondering why Director Yang San had invited them here. What was he going to do? What kind of performance should they have? Just as the three of them were still immersed in their fantasies, the door suddenly opened and 2 people came in. When the 2 of them appeared, the 3 people in the room hurriedly stood up, their faces filled with respect from the bottom of their hearts. There was no other way. The people who came were the director of the Security Bureau, Yang San, and the future 6th Madam, Luan Xiaoyu. Yes, the one who came with Yang San was Luan Xiaoyu. Not only did she come, but she also walked in front. From this point alone, she should be the host of today's meal. Hello, Director Luan. Because Luan Xiaoyu also had the identity of Director of Publicity, before she was brought into the palace by Yang Chendong's legal wife, everyone was used to calling her Director Luan. Hello everyone, I've made you wait for a long time. I'm really sorry. I just came out from City Lord Yu's place. Luan Xiaoyu had a smile on her face. Although she was very young and was still a few years away from 18 years old, the long-term training had shown the results. She showed a very mature side. Even when she saw 3 people with great power, she didn't show the slightest bit of fear. Luan Xiaoyu was very clear in her heart. Who gave her everything today, and why the 3 people in front of her respected her. It was precisely because of this that after receiving Yang Chendong's telegram, she quickly returned to Crimson City from below. She began to carry out the following reforms, investigating the other movements. After the incident with Yang Chendong felt that it was always right to nip the problem in the bud. He couldn't always see the serious consequences before coming out to take care of everything. If that was the case, it would only cause unnecessary internal friction. After making this decision, he placed this heavy responsibility on Luan Xiaoyu. Yang Chendong knew that Luan Xiaoyu was still young, but this person was absolutely loyal to him. Her love for him was also the purest. He didn't have to worry about her betrayal. Moreover, as his woman, she should experience more storms. After all, he couldn't imagine what kind of achievements he would achieve in the future. If the women by his side were too ordinary, then it would really harm them. In the future, when Yang Dong entered the headquarters, he had watched some TV dramas when he had nothing to do. There were quite a few dramas in Guangdong-do. Although he didn't want that scene to happen to him, as his woman, she had to have the ability to protect herself. This was him helping Luan Xiaoyu grow up in advance. After accepting this mission, Luan Xiaoyu also knew that this was Dong Shuai's way of reminding her, so she made up her mind to perform better to prove herself. She came. Not only did she come, she even went to Yu Qian's office before coming. She chatted with the senior for a long time and decided on the direction of her work. The only regret was that Yu Qian did not accept Luan Xiaoyu's invitation. Even if it was Yang Chendong's intention, the result would be the same. In Yu Qian's words, his main job was still the development of Qiqian City. As for the other work, he would do his best to cooperate, but he would not delve too deeply into it. After all, a person's energy was limited. Yu Qian's rejection was actually for Luan Xiaoyu's sake. Because with his prestige, if he really participated in this matter, she would have nothing to do with it. When she really achieved results, her achievements would also be covered up. Thus, Luan Xiaoyu was grateful from the bottom of her heart for this senior's care and guidance. The moment she entered the private room, Luan Xiaoyu told everyone about her meeting with Yu Qian. This was equivalent to telling everyone that what she wanted to do not only obtain the consent and attention of the sixth young master. This could be seen from her own identity and the fact that Bureau Chief Yang San accompanied her throughout the entire process. She also obtained the full cooperation of the city lord, Yu Qian. The three people present were all extremely intelligent. They immediately understood what he meant, and the smiles on their faces widened a little. Since a matter had received so much support, there was no way they could refuse. Luan Xiaoyu walked into the private room, and after greeting the three of them, she did not immediately sit down. Instead, she walked to the window of the private room and looked out. At this time, the sky was already dark, but the street lights in Crimson City were already lit up. One could see commoners coming and going on the streets. It was very lively. Not far away, some of the nearby residential areas were also lit up with electric lights. Looking from afar, it really looked like tens of thousands of homes were lit up. According to Yang Chendong's intention, there was no curfew in Crimson City unless there were special circumstances. As time passed, not only were the commoners used to it, it was still very lively even at night. There were even some tea houses, restaurants, brothels, and casinos that had better business at night. This promoted the rich life of the entire city and promoted the economic development of this place. Yes, there were brothels and casinos in Crimson City. However, these industries were not something that everyone could do. They required a special industry certificate issued by the city lord's mansion, and the taxes were heavy. On this point, Yang Chendong was also clear that there were some things that could not be truly prohibited. Rather than letting others secretly hide and do it, it was better to openly take it out and standardize it. He could also collect more business taxes and use it to serve the army and the people. Wouldn't that be better? So lively! Looking out the window, Luan Xiaoyu could not help but say with emotion, "Yes, so lively. This kind of scene can't be seen even in Baiming or Southern Ming's capital." Shen Yu also stood up and came to the window. Looking at everything in front of him, he also sighed with emotion. Such a lively place needs to be protected by us. Just based on this, we should all feel proud. Finally, Luan Xiaoyu's seemingly unintentional words began to lead to the main topic of today's conversation. Hearing this, Shen Yu and the other two's expressions turned cold. No one said anything. After all, Yang Tieju's matter had just happened. If everyone sang praises now, it would be too much of a bootlicker. The others did not say anything, only Luan Xiaoyu continued. Today, I called everyone here because of my idea, and also because of the sixth young master's idea. After Yang Tieju's matter, he even secretly hid weapons. This might be a special case, but at the same time, it also shows that we did not do our job well. There should be many people and departments involved in this matter, but we were completely unaware of it. In the end, we had to rely on the sixth young master to remind us what to do. Doesn't everyone feel ashamed because of this? Luan Xiaoyu's voice became louder and louder. At the end, there was a hint of reprimand in her voice. Chapter 739. She couldn't be blamed for being so angry. There were indeed quite a few people involved in this matter. Let's not talk about anything else. Let's just talk about the weapons found in Yang Shan's residence. Let's not talk about the 2088 rifles for now. Just this one alone was enough to implicate a lot of people. What about the remaining swords and spears? Those were all products of the arsenal, far from the hose and kitchen knives in the hands of ordinary people. They could be seen everywhere on the streets. These weapons were all made of iron, steel, and alloys. The production of every finished product was recorded. Not only that, so many weapons also required a lot of energy to be maintained daily. Otherwise, after a long time, the weapons would rust. In order to prevent this, not to mention wiping them frequently, they also needed to use vegetable oil. That was also a product of the military, and not something that ordinary people could buy with money. The weapons found in the Yang residence were all as shiny as new. It could be seen that they were usually maintained by people. Then the question was, who provided these materials? It was likely that many people would be implicated in the investigation. And these people sold the forbidden products to Yang Taizhu. Did they not think about the consequences and what would happen? There were also the 3 cargo ships and dozens of carriages of goods that were hijacked. It could be said that there were all kinds of things inside, such as divine realm, cosmetics, and women's clothes. Other than that, there were also things like cigarettes, ham sausages, canned food, and instant noodles. Many of them were only provided to the army and had not been circulated on the market. But now they were all smuggled out. Could Yang Zhu alone do all these things? It was obviously unreasonable. If this matter was thoroughly investigated, who knew how many people would be implicated? After saying so much, it was just to clarify one thing, and that was that there were probably many people involved in Yang Tiezhu's matter, and even more people knew about it. But why did the higher-ups not make a move? Could it be that they did not know? That was absolutely impossible. If that was the case, these people would not be in high positions. In the end, there was only one possibility, and that was that too many people knew about it, but they dealt with it with the mentality that it was better to avoid trouble. Everyone had the idea of sweeping the snow in front of their own door. As long as they did not participate in some matters, it would not be wrong. With such a mentality, Yang Taizhu was able to do things like a fish in water, which made the problem become more serious. This time, if Yu Mian hadn't arrived at the origin city, met Yang Chendong, and voiced out his concerns, he was afraid that if he had waited for a while, once it erupted, it would have caused an unimaginable result. This was also the reason why Yang Chendong was so angry and wanted to investigate the source of his investigation. Luan Xiaoyu closed the window in front of her, and the private room quickly fell into silence. Her voice was also clearly transmitted to the ears of the 4 people present. Let's talk business first. The dishes will be served later. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone, including Yang San, sat up straight and entered a state of semi-war. Luan Xiaoyu was very satisfied with everyone's attitude. She lightly nodded and casually said, "The 6th young master has ordered us to form a group of 5, which is the 5 of us. From today onwards, we will carry out a self-inspection for 3 months. Every local official, regardless of their position, was required to be thoroughly investigated. Every military officer up to the rank of a platoon in the army was also required to be investigated from head to toe. Once a problem is found, it must be verified immediately. If it is confirmed, what should be done is done. If there is no problem, they must be reassured and continue their work. If there is an outstanding person, they should be rewarded. Let's put it this way. The 6th young master has handed over the authority to deal with matters to the 5 of us. We have a great responsibility. Do you have confidence?" At this moment, no one would raise a different opinion. This was the 6th young master's order. If anyone dared to stand out and say no, their future achievements would come to an end. Naturally, more importantly, this kind of self-inspection was very necessary. This was also a method to prevent something similar to Yang Taizhu from happening again. All right. Seeing everyone's support, Luan Xiaoyu continued. As for the specific details of the work, we will have to discuss it in detail later. The first thing we need to do now is to announce Yang Tiezhu's case to the public. The investigation and evidence collection will be left to the Special Inspector Bureau and the Security Bureau. After everything is clarified, we will immediately hold a public trial in the city. We need to let everyone in the city know what is going on. Yes, our bureau will definitely cooperate fully. The Security Bureau will also cooperate fully. Yang San and Shen Yu quickly expressed their stance. Very good. Wan Xiaoyu continued nodding. Then, a sly smile appeared in her eyes. Things have to be done one step at a time. Next, let's proceed with the first item, eating. Hee. The words eat eased the tense atmosphere. Even Yang San, who was usually reserved, chuckled at this moment. The 5-man team was established, and the self-inspection activities were in full swing. This would eventually affect all the departments. All the cadres and officers carried out their activities quickly and ruthlessly. On the first day, more than 40 cadres from various departments were taken away. Among them, 6 were military officers. On the second day, more than 50 were taken away. On the third day, more than 70 were taken away. On the fourth day, more than 90 were taken away. It wasn't until the 5th day that the number began to decrease. More than 60 people were taken away. Then the number rose and fell. More and more cadres were taken away for questioning. Some of them couldn't come out after entering the 5-man team. These were all people with major problems. There were also some who were released a few days after entering, but they had already been demoted or even fired from their positions. They directly became ordinary citizens. There were also some who were released not long after and continued to shine brightly at work. There were even some who were directly promoted after coming out, replacing the position of a superior who had made a mistake. There were some who were promoted by 1, 2, or 3 ranks. This was a huge reshuffle. It had been about 5 years since Crimson City became Yang Xie's headquarters. Many of them had benefited from this, and many of them had their lives changed. From having problems with food and drink in the past, they were now living a life of luxury. However, this still made some people unhappy. They felt that they should have received more. Even if Yang Chendong implemented a high salary policy, and their salaries were enough to cover their family's expenses, there were still some who couldn't help but reach out. In the face of such a greedy person, of course, Yang Chendong wouldn't be polite. This time, he checked again and eliminated all the black sheep with such thoughts. One could imagine that after this incident, the atmosphere of the entire Crimson City would change. In the future, the efficiency of work would also become faster and faster. The self-inspection activities were still ongoing, and many people's fates had changed. Some who benefited from their work were promoted, while some who were greedy received their deserved retribution. At this moment, Yang Chendong sent another telegram to Wan Xiaoyu. A new policy to raise the treatment of officials had been implemented, and that was the special ticketing system. The so-called special ticketing system was similar to the planned economy in the early days of the Republic, where the citizens would be given food stamps to purchase meat and grains. Yang Chendong requested for the officials to be given a certain percentage of their monthly salary. Once they had such ticketing, they would have priority to purchase some sought-after goods in the market. For example, cigarettes, all sorts of beverages, bottles of strong liquor, magical mirrors, high-grade cosmetics, and beautiful women's clothing. For this, Yang Chendong requested for a store to be set up in Crimson City. This store had a complete range of goods, and the quantity was sufficient. However, there was a difference, and that was that everything had to be purchased with special ticketing systems. Here, silver and even gold were useless. The reason for such a decision was that there were too many officials in the 5-man investigation team. In addition, the momentum was very large, which caused many people to feel fear. There were actually not enough officials to go around. In order to make more capable people work for him, Yang Chendong decided to give them some benefits. Under such temptation, he was not afraid that some people would not be loyal to him. It had to be said that when the special ticketing system appeared, the ticketing systems in the hands of the officials became popular goods. Although there were a lot of factories in Crimson City, and a lot of good things because there were too many merchants outside, the supply could not meet the demand. As a result, Even in Crimson City, some items were difficult to buy. With the special ticketing system in the store, those good things that could not be bought outside were actually available here. The ticketing system became a hard currency, and some of the rich people started to have ideas about the ticketing systems in the hands of the officials. The officials were also humans, and they also wanted to live a better life. The ticketing systems in their hands were not enough for their own use, so how could they sell them? Even if some people wanted to sell a portion of it for some reason, it was difficult to satisfy the needs of more rich people. Over time, some people had no choice but to give up on buying it and think of ways to become officials themselves. Yang Chendong's move caused the number of people who applied for the official exam to increase by a lot, greatly alleviating the pressure and fear brought to everyone by the five-man team. Crimson City finally continued to move forward amidst the wind and rain. After many new officials took up their positions, the effects in all aspects were indeed much faster than before. Just from this point alone, it seemed that the previous efforts were worth it. Just as the 5 young misses were carrying out their operation with great momentum, Su Munaer was not idle either. She left the palace several times to look for good seedlings in the CA. Her request was a little strange. She requested for all of them to be women because she believed that some things were more convenient for women to do than men. Chapter 740. After obtaining Yang Chendong's approval and support, Su Munaer not only received a large amount of funds for her activities, but she was also allowed to enter the refugee camp in Crimson City to find suitable seedlings among the 5 million people who made the deal with the Southern Ming Empire. Under such generous conditions, girls and women were chosen by Su Munaer one after another. They became the first batch of important personnel in the CIA and became the cornerstone of the CIA's development. In this incident, many people were also caught in the crossfire because they did not perform their duties properly. There were many people in the military and the local government. However, at the same time, the working environment became more pure. Even the relationship between the military and the political department was eased to a certain extent. Lung Song's name was not in the 5-man team. Although he was the political commissar of the 1st Division, Mo Qingyu, and it looked the same, only he knew that it was because he was the main force in the confrontation between the military and the political department. There was also a period of time when he was very close to Yang Xianxia. This was clearly a warning from the 6th young master to him. From the moment the 5-man team was formed, the smart Lung Song immediately changed his strategy. He no longer resisted the work of the political department. Instead, he cooperated with it. This also allowed the military's work to be greatly improved. When the news reached Yang Chendong's ears in the first city, he smiled and was very satisfied. If a force wanted to develop, it was just like life. It would always encounter problems. The key was the kind of mentality one had to solve the problem and not blindly escape and endure. Only by cutting off one's wrist would there be a new life. Otherwise, even if one was still alive, one would not be a healthy person. The matter of Crimson City had returned to the right path. In the process of returning, there would definitely be some pain. Some people and old friends would also be cut off from fate. However, the path that should be taken still had to be taken. The development of the first city was also imminent. These days, Yang Chendong not only had his eyes on Crimson City, but also sent a few telegrams to understand the situation. The development and construction of the first city were not lagging behind. These days, Yu Mian woke up early and slept late every day. He finally understood the situation in the city and had a general guideline for what to do next. Today, he took the initiative to come to the city lord's mansion to report to Yang Chendong. He was told that the 6th young master was inspecting the work in the logistics department. The so-called logistics department was just a general term. Because the first city was not as complete as the Crimson City, many of the supplies transported from outside were piled up in the logistics department. Today, Yang Chendong came here to inquire about the situation of the supplies. In addition, he came to see the situation of the soldiers receiving the new weapons here, the Big Dipper crossbow, also known as Big Dipper steel crossbow. The so-called Big Dipper crossbow was a new type of crossbow made of pure steel. Unlike the traditional ones, it was more pocket-sized. However, being short didn't mean that it wasn't powerful. On the contrary, because the spring was strong enough, it could shoot a distance of 100 meters. This kind of Big Dipper crossbow could be tied to the arm and shot at the enemy. More importantly, it was equipped with a mechanism that allowed it to fire 7 arrows at once. This greatly increased its lethality and increased its chances of victory on the battlefield. With the current ability of the Crimson City Munitions Factory, it wasn't a problem to create a Type 81 assault rifle. However, it would still take a lot of time to create a qualified Type 95 assault rifle. How to save the use of the Type 95 assault rifle and what weapon to use to replace it was the problem that the people of the Crimson City Munitions Factory had to think about and face during this period of time. Someone suggested that if it didn't work, the Cold Front Army should use the Type 81 assault rifle again. However, this idea was quickly rejected. Not to mention that with the current factory ability of the munitions factory, the number of Type 81 assault rifles that they could create was limited and could not be provided to all the Cold Front Army soldiers. Just by giving up on the Type 95 assault rifle, once that person became used to it, the research and development work would only be slower. Then, no one knew when they could create the real Type 95 assault rifle. The people of the munitions factory also needed to be stressed. This debate was finally reported to Yang Chendong in the form of a telegram. He waved his pen and gave the final decision. The development of the Type 95 assault rifle could not be stopped. They could also increase the number of people and funds. For the time being, they could find a weapon to replace the Type 95 assault rifle as a transitional product. Under such a decree, the Big Dipper crossbow appeared. How is it? How's the accuracy? In the logistics team, Yang Chendong looked at the 3rd Division's Division Commander Wu Sheng and Political Commissar Chen Bo, who came to collect the equipment, and asked with a smile. Reporting to the 6th young master, the Big Dipper crossbow is very good. Chen Bo immediately stood at attention and said respectfully, "The crossbow can shoot continuously, which is equivalent to shooting continuously. Moreover, the size of the crossbow is smaller, so more of them can be carried on the body." After training, the accuracy can also be improved. However, the shooting distance is too short, only 100 meters. The 3rd Division's Division Commander Wu Sheng also gave his evaluation. In the end, he pointed out the shortcomings and expressed his dissatisfaction. "Alright, this is just a crossbow. Even if it can shoot continuously, it's still a crossbow. How far do you want to shoot? Moreover, when the enemy is far away, you can still use the Type 95 assault rifle." Yang Chendong patted Wu Sheng's shoulder and warned others to be content with what they had. Although the Type 95 assault rifle was used for a long time, there would be some wear and tear and damage. However, with the efforts of Wu Hua and the other blacksmiths, as long as the damage wasn't too severe, simple repairs could still be done. If it really didn't work, Yang Chendong could just use the big warehouse. The Type 95 assault rifle was stored in boxes and boxes. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to give enough pressure to the Crimson City arsenal, he wouldn't have thought of using a weapon like the Big Dipper crossbow. Of course, Yang Chendong's actions were also a display of confidence. The current Lung Feng's Division 3 division, even if they didn't have guns, their battle strength was still very strong. This kind of army was what he needed. Normally, they would use cold weapons. Against strong enemies, they would use guns. With this combination, the Lung Feng division would definitely become the strongest army in the world. Only then would they have the strength to conquer more places and territories. Wu Sheng also knew that his expectations were a little too high, so he chuckled and nodded. "6th young master, please be at ease. The 3 of us have been diligently training. Even if we use the same weapons as our opponents, we will still be able to win. Yes, that's what I want." Yang Chendong laughed, showing that he was in a good mood. "Young master, City Lord Yumian is here." While Yang Chendong was still chatting and commenting on the Big Dipper crossbow with the officers of the 3 divisions, Beta Persei walked to Yang Chendong's side and reported, "Okay, I'll go take a look." Motioning for Wu Sheng, Chen Bo, and the others to continue working, Yang Chendong turned around and walked out of the logistics group's gate under the protection of a group of guards. He saw Yu Mian waiting there. When he saw Yang Chendong, the first thing he said was, "Sixth young master, I want to farm near the first city." Farm? Yang Chendong looked at Yu Mian in a daze and became interested. Continue. Seeing that Yang Chendong did not object to him immediately, Yu Mian knew that his idea should be feasible. He immediately said, "Sixth young master, I've already investigated. The reason why the people here are very poor and sometimes even have problems eating is not because they are not hardworking, nor is it because the soil here is not good. Although it's called yellow soil, as long as you plant properly, you can still grow good crops. They don't dare to plant because safety has always been a problem. The Mongols lived by herding. This was a way of life left behind by their ancestors. It was also because it was more flexible. On the grassland, the strong preyed on the weak. The strong would always be able to obtain more resources. Imagine, what kind of strength did an ordinary person have? If he chose to farm, it would be equivalent to imprisoning himself in a certain area. Usually, it was fine, but once he encountered an enemy attack and danger came, he could drive the flock of sheep away. However, he could not take the crops planted on the ground with him. That would only benefit the invading enemy. As time passed, no one thought about farming anymore. On this point, Yu Mian had talked to many people in the city, including many Han people. They did indeed live by farming, and when they first came to the grassland, they were not used to it. However, because there was no safe place, they could only give up on the idea of farming and being self-sufficient. Now, with the appearance of the mercenaries and their strength, they had become some sort of guarantee, allowing some people to see hope again. Thus, they made this request. After Yu Mian investigated for a while, he also felt that this matter was feasible. Thus, he came to find Yang Chendong and proposed his idea. Yes, it's farming. I've thought about it. Not only can he solve the problem of food for the army on the spot, once the people have land, they will also have a strong sense of belonging. This way, they will be able to gather people's hearts faster and make the first city prosperous and prosperous. Yu Mian said excitedly. Yes, this is a good idea. However, it's already August now. In addition to the cold winter here, I'm afraid it's too late this year. Yang Chendong nodded and began to analyze the reality of the matter from the actual operation. Yes, it's too late this year. In fact, we don't have the seeds of the crops. All of this needs time to prepare. I've already thought about it. We can contact Crimson City now and ask them to provide more seeds. We can wait for them to be delivered in spring next year. As for now, we can first open up the fertile land, measure it, and distribute it to the citizens who are already in the first city. This way, they will have hope, and the first city can also attract more people to come and seek refuge. Yu Mian still said with an excited face. From this point, it could be seen that he had indeed put in some effort. Yang Chendong did not answer immediately. Instead, he nodded after thinking carefully. I think it's possible. Then you can go ahead and do it. This way, we can open up the fertile land and tell the people that they don't have to worry about their safety. As long as the mercenaries are here, they will protect their fruits of victory. When the enemy comes, we can just beat them away. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.